So we'll get into that. I'd like the rest of the panelists to please join us. I see you are now, and I'd like to, there are a few questions I'd like to get into. Um, but first, I'll just ask one for myself and then go out to the other questions. All of you, starting with you, Jeff, you mentioned something regarding the uncertainty that we're facing, but you also, all of you, talked about how everything that we've known, essentially, has been changed in some way by COVID-19. So I'm wondering if each of you could just briefly announce or just briefly address what you think that's taken place during COVID-19 that might be a good thing to keep. And I'll start with you, Basma.
This is actually a question that I was discussing the other day with some of the people who I have met during COVID. Actually, it's really important that things that we didn't know about, that we can really create a bigger global community from home. Yes, we have been working locally with refugees and immigrants community. We have been locally working with many organizations, even nationwide. But I felt during COVID and during the quarantine, we were able to make more connection, bring in more stories, and nothing limits us because here we are. We can be all together with less expense of flight and staying overnight. And for me, like as a refugee, I see all this, even though it's a great connection, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money on a 30-minute conference that you need to attend. So to me, it's there's a lot of saving, it's happening, but in the same time, a lot of connecting with people outside your community.
Okay, let's get Jeff. You were the first person to throw that out there, so let's get back to you on that. You talked about this uncertainty, and you also talked about everything that's been done, pretty much being a stopgap, but some of it should be kept. What are your thoughts on what we keep?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, our ability to deal with uncertainty and imprecise information, right? Everything from, there's a lot that's still not known about COVID-19, but yet we know enough to know that it's a good idea to do it, like wearing a mask. What is the exact benefit of that? What is the exact but we know that by layering these different interventions, we have a pathway forward, we have different options, and that's really the key to managing uncertainty. When you manage certainty, you come up with checklists and you come up with procedures and you follow them. When you are managing uncertainty, you're trying to create options that you can exercise in the future as more information becomes available, but also working backwards. What information do you really need? So, there's information all over the place on how long COVID-19 lasts on surfaces. Is it a day? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 days? Depending on the surface, depending on the conditions. But what are you going to do differently? Are you going to stop washing your hands if that number is 2 days instead of 3? You're still going to wipe things down. You're still going to wash your hands. So I think that this acclimation to uncertainty is something that's going to benefit us for a lot of different aspects of the coming century and the different kinds of disasters, including biological, but many others that we're going to continue to face.
Yeah, thanks. Barak, what are your thoughts?
So, more or less, as a response to both questions, actually, on the one hand, there are lots of imprecise information that we are dealing with. Even in Turkey's example, it's made by the authorities. But on the other hand, as Basma stated, there are also several options to connect with each other, such as Twitter journalism is one of the information that before preparing my documents for this presentation, I had also opportunity to talk with one relatives of the inmates through the Twitter. So that's also one of the, if there's any positive aspect of the global pandemic, is also we are more connected, that even my for instance grandma, she's using the Twitter right now to get the information that she needs.
Okay, Mr. Kemka.
I think that just to reiterate, what Barak just said, I think we're not going to go back to the age where we're not used to and being comfortable working online. So I think that's a big thing, where we are so comfortable now working online, working with people all over the world, as Basma said, connecting with everyone and learning online. I think that's a new world we've all entered, every age, every generation. And I think that's something we're going to keep. But I do think that for me, the greatest thing is learning to be, stationary, to be with oneself, to be with one's close ones, to take the time, as you said, Mr. Green, right at the beginning, that it's an opportunity that we shouldn't waste. It's an opportunity to learn really what it means to be with ourselves and to value things that perhaps we didn't value as much as we should have in the days when we took everything for granted.
Yeah, I can certainly say that talking with the four of you today has really turned a page in my life. I know a lot about what happens in the world, but the problem is I'm moving so fast, I just don't have the opportunity to digest the important nuggets of each element of it. And I think our people that have joined this seminar today are really benefiting from this, because we've got some pretty good questions here. And here's one. This question comes from Sasha Butler. And she says, intercultural and global competence is at the core of the United Nations focus on global citizenship, education for an interconnected and interdependent global society. The question is, what do you believe are the short-term and long-term implications of this COVID-19 emerging neo-nationalist mindset on youth and young adults? And I'll start with you on this particular question, Jeff.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, one of the most useful pieces of information that I've seen was actually a roundup of the behavioral sciences and looking at both all the way down to the individual as well as to the cultural level on just sort of different ways of approaching this. On cultures with more of a collective identity, it's going to be easier to ask for sacrifices to individual freedoms, whereas for a greater good, whereas that's going to be a lot harder in other societies. And I think we're seeing that, you know, it's really an inflection point on all of this. Pandemics really exploit divisions in our politics and divisions in our societies, and unfortunately we're seeing that take place. But they also bring out the best in us. I think it's important to recognize both. This is, I guess, kind of a lame answer, but I'll give it anyway. I think on the one hand, we need to call out nationalism. We need to call out these very damaging behaviors when we see them, but we also need to celebrate what's going well. We need to celebrate where communities are coming together and leading the way. I appreciated Mr. Kemke's remarks as well too about the entrepreneurial spirit. It's this this entrepreneurial attitude from communities that are actually going to shine a light on how we approach this globally. And so I'm grateful actually for all my colleagues here today who have helped shine a light on a lot of the good things that are going on, as well as a lot of the challenges we face.
Yeah, and Mr. Kemke, you mentioned this horrible number of people that aren't able to access the internet, and we know that young people are probably impacted more so than others because a lot of learning takes place online now. Kids need internet to do homework. What are your thoughts on that particular question about how this, the long-term and short-term impacts of this neo-nationalist mindset and just the downside of what the impact it's having on youth and young adults?
I think it's a very real problem and a real worry. You know, for us to become insular and to think just about our small world, I think is very dangerous in a world which faces really global challenges. Climate change is a global challenge. Refugee crisis is a global challenge. I think there are many global challenges. The pandemic is a global challenge. And if we retreat into a sort of towers of protectionism, I think we're going to face a much harder time adapting and fixing and dealing with the world that's going to emerge for the next generation. So I think we need to do everything to create a sense of, you know, one humankind, global citizenship. I'm a great believer in global citizenship and think that we need to understand that no man is an island. We're all connected. We're all together. We need to all uplift the world together. You know, a planet where 8% of the world has 83% of the world's wealth is not a planet that can be sustained. You know, we need to correct these inequities in whatever way we can, and we need to work together to do it. So I think it's a real threat.
Yeah. Barack, your thoughts on that question?
So Yeah, my thoughts like the Jeff, like you've been in like war zone, so like to my understanding, like the military like strategy, if there's a one common enemy, then like even though like there's a disparity within the society, you are like becoming a unitary. So like you're establishing a one enemy to fight for. So in this like example, the enemy is the COVID-19. However, the question is the sustainability. Are we going to redefine the enemy as neo-nationalistic thinking, or like are we going to redefine the enemies like another like problems that like we are seeing, like for instance like discrimination. So the question is the sustainability, but like since like we are experiencing a practice right now to fight for a common enemy, then I think that we will proceed with the next steps.
Okay. Basma, we've seen really horrible pictures of children who are refugees, certainly within the last decade. We've always seen these pictures, but now in the age that we live in, there are more cameras out there all over the world, and we're seeing more pictures, and it's heartbreaking when you see this. So give me your view on how this whole process, all of this right now, is impacting young adults and young people, especially the refugees.
I think from this perspective, or as a mother who have two girls, one of them is middle school and the other is third grade. COVID has just challenges everyone. It challenges many governments. We thought, even as the U.S., that we have it all. We know it all. But it's every school have been challenged. Every kid have been challenged. I never imagined that my kid, who is in third grade, can access Zoom, and now she's able to teach me how to use it. I am challenged. Like I'm facing a challenge every single day. It's because as much as I am a person who always like my kids not to be exposed that much to the computer and to the internet, but now it's a must. They spend a lot of their time during the day that they need to really face the computer and work. And in my mind, talking about wasting, we are printing so many papers because the school system are not ready to do online school. Youth, it's a different challenge than challenges we lived before. Talking about refugees who have already ESOL problem and and they are already struggling inside the school, and now they need to take it further to work from home. Most of our families, their parents really struggling learning English, and now they are trying to help their kids at home to really finish the school year and be able to really go to the next level. Many of them failing because there is no system in place, and everyone trying. So I think the challenge is different varied from a community to another, but definitely I focusing on the ESOL students and the youth who come so new to a new country and a new home, and they need to work from home and not connect with others. It's a really big challenge. How this could solve, I think we talked about it in the beginning. We need really technology to reach out the 40%. Someone just shared 41% of the world have no access to the internet. This is really a big challenge that we're going to need to face from now on. And again, not investing in the health system, another challenge that now we are seeing. But we are always good on investing in weapons and wars and these kind of things that produce more refugees and immigrants.
Let me open my microphone here. So we've laid out, and you've done an amazing job, but you're used to amazing anyway. You folks are some of the brightest and best out there on all of these topics, and you've done an amazing job of laying out these problems and these troubles that we face. I'd like to hear from each of you before our time runs out today, a solution, something that you think needs to be done and can be done to mitigate or to fix some aspect of the elements you've talked about. Barak, I'd like to start with you. You talked about the food supply, medical access, and these problems that exist for inmates. Any thoughts on how to address that?
So first of all, the international, what I know, like in Turkey, international community makes a huge contribution to solving the issue. So one of the like advantage of the COVID solidarity, let's say, we can like increase the pressure on governments that they are not, if they are not doing their jobs in a proper way, then like because of the pressure, it may lead them to voluntarily or involuntarily to do what their positive obligations are. So it can be one of the solutions.
All right, Mr. Schlegelmilch. Jeff, you've talked about the responding to global emergencies and best practices from COVID-19, and you've thrown a number of things out there that we need to deal with and to handle. What would you say would be the number one solution to the issue, or something in the area of the issues that you've spoken about today that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think most importantly, it's to engage the communities because it's communities that are getting us through this pandemic. And even in areas where we see a lot of failures at very high levels, it's at the community level where they're figuring out the schooling process in some places better than others. They're figuring out manufacturing, they're figuring out how to get things done. And I think when we try to look for a one-size-fits-all approach, we always fall short. When we try to impose solutions on communities, we a lot of times make things worse. But in addition to that, we starve ourselves of the ingenuity occurring on the front lines where people are working their way through this. So to invest in bringing communities to the table, invest in responses that are maybe more expensive and take more time, but account for the people that are living through them, I think we'll get some ideas that we haven't even thought of yet for some of the biggest problems in some of the smallest of places.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Kimka, Shiv, would you share your thoughts on one thing that we could do, a solution that would fix some of this massive problem that we have out here today?
Thank you, Mr. Green. Well, I think everyone's trying to do their best in many ways, from governments to corporations and so on. We, in our small way, are trying to do the same thing. We believe that with young people, it's very important to focus them on what can be, on a positive mindset. We're working in 190 countries with our foundation now. We've got hundreds and maybe thousands of young people volunteering to create an ecosystem that will encourage young people to be entrepreneurs. We've collected about $1 billion of prizes to give to these young people as they create these opportunities. We've brought all the sports teams in the world to become part of it, to be like the big brothers or big sisters, to encourage people to create some fun in their lives, and to do it all online. So in the next 3 months, we hope to have 250,000 applications to give away $1 billion to young people around the world who are trying to make a difference, trying to create some enterprise to solve some problem. And for us, it's not about us doing it. It's about all the people we meet doing it together, all coming together, activating communities, as Jeff said earlier, and really being compassionate and thinking about, not just their own problems, but when you think about the problems at large, your own problems often seem much more manageable and much easier to handle. And so I think we're trying to lift people's eyes and say, look, it's not just a time of problems, it's also a time of opportunities. Let's try and lift the skies with 1,000 hands rather than each one trying to do it on their own.
Okay. I'm being told we're running out of time, but we've had a great time today. And Basma, I would love to hear some more from you, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. But I did get a great comment from someone that said that was a wonderful presentation on refugees. It's opened our eyes and minds to the challenges they face and the opportunities to tap into their talents. And please keep doing the work that you're doing and keep it up. All of you, thank you. You all are movers and shakers, and you're moving and shaking at a time when the world needs it. If there's any time the world has ever needed to be flat or equal, it's now. And you all are doing exactly what it takes to make it that way. So I want to thank you all again for joining us and being with us on this program today. And I myself am very grateful to the Journalists and Writers Foundation for having us all here. And hopefully we will join again and connect offline and continue this work, this very important work. And thank you all again for being here. And I wish you the best and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.